The doctor said, "You don't have much time left. At most, 7 days." After hearing that, my husband smiled. He held my hand and whispered, his voice laced with cruelty, "Finally, you're going to die in 7 days, and when you're gone, the house and everything you own will be mine." 5 minutes after he left, I picked up my phone and called my gardener. "Please help me, now. I promise you, after this, you'll never have to work hard again." Before the story begins, feel free to comment where you're watching from. Don't forget to like and subscribe so Stories with Meaning can continue bringing you more powerful stories. The ticking sound of the wall clock echoed loudly through the VIP hospital room. It felt like a countdown, marking the final moments of its occupant. The air was cold, heavy with the sharp scent of antiseptic. Victoria Hale sat propped up against the hospital bed, her face pale and lifeless. Her eyes were fixed at Dr. Adrian Cole, who stood at the foot of the bed, his expression filled with regret. Beside Victoria sat her husband, Victor Kane, gripping her hand tightly. His face was swollen, as if he had been crying intensely before the doctor entered the room. Dr. Cole took a deep breath before finally delivering the devastating news he'd been holding back. Victoria's organ failure had progressed rapidly and mysteriously. The medical team had done everything they could, but her condition continued to deteriorate at an alarming rate. With a heavy heart, the young doctor explained that she likely had only 7 days left before her body would completely shut down. Victoria's world shattered. Tears streamed down her hollow cheeks. She never imagined her life would end at just 29, just when everything had finally started to feel right. Victor lowered his head deeply. His shoulders trembled violently. He looked utterly broken, as if the news had destroyed him. Dr. Cole gently patted his shoulder before quietly excusing himself, leaving the couple alone. The door closed softly. Silence filled the room. Victoria turned toward her husband, seeking comfort, clinging to the belief that she was lucky to have someone like him. He'd cared for her, fed her, stayed by her side day and night. But then, something shifted. Victor's sobbing slowly stopped. His trembling shoulders stilled. He lifted his face, and there were no tears. The sorrowful expression he'd worn moments ago vanished, replaced with a cold, unsettling smile. Victoria froze. Before she could speak, Victor tightened his grip on her hand. It was no longer gentle, it was crushing, painful. He leaned close to her ear. His breath was warm, but his words were colder than ice. "At last, this moment has come," he whispered. "You're going to die in 7 days, and that's exactly what I've been waiting for." He continued, his voice dripping with satisfaction. "Once you're gone, your mansion, your land, your inheritance, everything becomes mine." Victor admitted he'd grown tired of pretending to be a loving, obedient husband during their 3-year marriage. "I've always hated you and your family, always looking down on me." Victoria felt her heart shatter. The pain was far worse than the doctor's diagnosis. She searched his eyes for even a hint of doubt, a sign this was all a nightmare. There was none. Only cold ambition. Victor released her hand roughly, as if she were nothing more than garbage. He stood up and calmly straightened his shirt. "I'll step out for a bit," he said casually. "Need to handle some hospital paperwork and pick up medication." But in truth, he was going to celebrate with another woman. Without another glance, Victor walked out, leaving Victoria alone in suffocating silence. 5 minutes passed. Victoria remained still, staring at the door. Then slowly, her tears stopped. She wiped them away. The fear in her eyes faded, replaced with something sharp, something dangerous. Rage. This wasn't a coincidence. She remembered the strange taste in the herbal drinks Victor prepared for her every night. Now it all made sense. He didn't just want her wealth, he'd been poisoning her. Victoria grabbed her phone. Her hands were no longer shaking. She dialed a contact saved under the name Mrs. Sullivan. The call connected on the second ring. "Can I help you, ma'am?" came the worried voice from the other end. Victoria didn't respond with weakness. Her voice was firm, commanding, unrecognizable from the fragile woman Victor thought he knew. "I need your help now. I promise you, after this, you'll never have to work another day in your life." This was no longer about survival. This was war. "I'm not going to die in 7 days," she said coldly. "I'm going to live long enough to watch him fall apart." After ending the call, Victoria wasted no time. She reached under her pillow and pulled out a hidden tablet. From the moment she was admitted, she had a bad feeling, so she secretly reactivated the surveillance system in her mansion, accessible only to her. She opened the CCTV app. The screen displayed multiple angles of her luxurious home. Her heart pounded. A black sedan pulled into the driveway. Victor. He hadn't gone to handle hospital paperwork. He went home, and he wasn't alone. A young woman stepped out from the passenger side, dressed boldly. Victoria recognized her instantly. Vanessa Blake, Victor's so-called business associate. Victoria watched them as they entered the house, laughing freely, as if it already belonged to them. Victor wrapped his arm around Vanessa's waist as they walked into the living room. Through the crystal-clear audio, she heard everything. Victor bragged that the house would soon be theirs. The doctor had already confirmed Victoria's death was near. Vanessa laughed, praising his brilliance. Victoria clenched her fist, fury burning inside her. But she kept watching. Victor led Vanessa into Victoria's private office, a place strictly off-limits to anyone. That was where she kept her most important inheritance documents. Victor moved eagerly toward a large painting on the wall. He pulled it down, revealing a hidden safe. Victoria smirked. She knew. He'd secretly watched her open it once before. He was confident. The safe clicked open. Victor cheered, but the sound died instantly. Inside, nothing. No property deeds, no diamonds, no cash. Only a thin layer of dust. Victor's face turned crimson with rage. He tore through the contents of the safe, desperately searching for a hidden compartment, but found nothing. Behind him, Vanessa's voice cut through the tension. "Where's everything you promised me?" she asked, her tone laced with disappointment. Victor slammed the safe door shut with a deafening bang, loud enough to echo clearly through the CCTV microphone. His frustration exploded. He grabbed a flower vase from the desk and hurled it across the room. It shattered violently against the wall, scattering shards across the floor. Watching from her tablet screen, Victoria remained calm, cold, calculated. Without hesitation, she typed a short message to Mrs. Sullivan. "Execute Plan B. Move the real documents to the secondary location immediately." Victoria had never been foolish enough to leave her wealth in a house she shared with a man she never fully trusted. A betrayed wife, after all, can be far more dangerous than anyone expects. Back on the CCTV feed, Victor, still seething, suddenly noticed something fall from behind the painting he had removed earlier. A thick brown envelope. His eyes lit up instantly. "This has to be it," he muttered. With trembling hands, he tore it open, but instead of documents, there was only a single sheet of paper. Victoria's handwriting. Victor frowned as he read it. The message was short, but it struck like a blade. The key was never here. It was in loyalty, the one thing you chose to throw away. Victor crushed the paper in his fist, his anger boiling over. He threw it to the ground and shouted for the house staff. "Where is everyone?" No one answered, because Victoria had already given all staff leave except for Mrs. Sullivan, who had a very specific role to play. Vanessa stepped closer, trying to calm him. "Relax, we still have 7 days," she said. "She's still alive, which means you still have leverage." She smirked. "Make her sign everything over to you while she's still in that hospital bed." Victor's expression slowly shifted. Then he nodded, a cruel plan forming in his mind. "I'll go back tomorrow," he said, "with a notary. I'll make sure she signs it, one way or another." Victoria turned off the tablet. She had seen enough. Everything was unfolding exactly as she had planned. Victor had already fallen into his own emotional trap. She took a deep breath, steadying her racing heart. This was only the beginning. Tomorrow, she would need to perform the role of a lifetime. Victoria gazed out the hospital window. The sky over New York City darkened as evening fell. But to her, this darkness was not the end. It was the beginning of her rebirth. A soft knock came at the door. Quickly, Victoria hid the tablet and adjusted her posture, returning to her fragile, weakened state. A nurse entered, carrying a tray of food and medication. Victoria's eyes immediately locked onto the pills. Suspicion flickered in her gaze. She couldn't trust anything here anymore, not when Victor might have already bought someone inside this hospital. As the nurse turned to check the IV line, Victoria moved swiftly. She slipped the pills into a tissue and clenched them in her hand. When the nurse turned back, Victoria pretended to swallow water, secretly tucking the pills into her pocket. The nurse smiled, satisfied, and left. Victoria was alone again, preparing for war. Night deepened. The hospital corridors fell into silence, broken only by distant footsteps. Inside her room, Victoria lay awake, staring at the pale white ceiling. Her thoughts drifted back to months ago, when her health first began to decline. That was when Victor suddenly became attentive. Every night he brought her a glass of warm herbal drink, dark, thick, and bitter. "It's expensive," he would say softly, "a special blend to keep you healthy so we can finally start a family." She trusted him, drank it every night, even though it left a strange metallic taste on her tongue. Her suspicion only began 2 weeks ago. Victor was in the bathroom. She accidentally knocked over the glass, spilling it into a small decorative plant by her bedside. The next morning, the plant was dying. Its leaves yellowed, as if burned by chemicals. That was the moment everything changed. From that day on, Victoria never swallowed another drop. She would secretly pour it down the sink or into a plant pot, pretending she had finished it. But the damage had already been done. Months of slow poisoning, low-dose arsenic, enough to mimic natural organ failure, but not enough to kill her instantly. That's why the doctors were confused. A soft knock broke her thoughts. The door opened. Mrs. Sullivan entered carrying a stainless steel food container. She smiled warmly, but her eyes were sharp, unwavering. "This is safe," she whispered. "I cooked it myself. Separate kitchen, locked. No one else has access." She placed it gently on the table, then handed Victoria a small bottle, fresh green coconut water infused with a traditional natural antidote. Victoria drank it eagerly. The cool liquid soothed her throat instantly. Mrs. Sullivan leaned closer. "Be careful, he'll become more aggressive as the 7th day approaches." Victoria nodded, adjusting her shawl, her gaze hardened.
I'll be ready." An hour later, the door burst open. No knock. Victor walked in hurriedly, followed by a man in a formal shirt carrying a letter briefcase. "This is Mr. Bradley Carter, my notary," he said quickly, his tone suddenly filled with fake concern. He approached the bed and roughly stroked Victoria's head. "Things are getting complicated. Hospital procedures, finances. I need you to sign a temporary asset transfer authorization." He smiled faintly. "If something happens during treatment, I can act quickly on your behalf." Victoria looked at him weakly. Inside, she was laughing. How absurd! What kind of husband asks for asset transfer while his wife is dying, unless greed is his true intention? Mr. Carter stepped forward, placing a thick document and an expensive pen in front of her. Victoria glanced at it. Even through her dizziness, she could read the title clearly. This wasn't medical authorization. This was full transfer of ownership, her estate, her assets, everything, unconditionally to Victor Kane. A legal robbery. Her hand trembled, deliberately exaggerated. She tried to hold the pen, but her fingers appeared too weak. Victor's patience snapped. He grabbed her hand, forced the pen into her grip. "Sign it," he demanded sharply, "so we can all get some rest." The pen tip touched the paper, and at that exact moment, Victoria suddenly let her entire body go limp.
The pen slipped from her fingers, rolling across the floor. Victoria's body suddenly went limp, collapsing to the side. Her eyes shut tightly, as if she had lost consciousness in an instant. "Victoria!" Victor shouted hysterically, not out of concern, but because he hadn't gotten the signature. He shook her body roughly, his voice rising in panic. "Wake up! Sign it first!" Mr. Bradley Carter stepped back, visibly shaken. The fear in his eyes was clear. If his client died right in front of him during an illegal transaction, his career would be over. Victor slapped Victoria's cheek repeatedly, muttering curses under his breath. His plan delayed. From the corner of the room, Mrs. Sullivan moved swiftly. She shoved Victor away from the bed. "Doctor, we need help in here!" she shouted. Within seconds, Dr. Adrian Cole and several nurses rushed into the room. Amid the chaos, Victoria, eyes still closed, fought back a smile, a quiet victory. She had bought herself another day and pushed Victor deeper into frustration. Victor was eventually dragged out of the room by hospital staff, deemed disruptive, leaving Victoria behind, calm, in control. The next day, the atmosphere inside the luxury Manhattan estate felt tense. Victor stormed inside, his face twisted with anger. His failure the day before had ignited something volatile within him. He paced back and forth in the living room, shouting into his phone. "This is your fault. Everything is falling apart," he snapped at Vanessa. Then, his eyes landed on a figure in the backyard, Mrs. Sullivan, calmly sweeping fallen leaves. Her presence suddenly irritated him. She was always there, watching, like a silent observer of his every move. He remembered how she had pushed him in the hospital. Humiliation burned inside him. Victor stormed toward the glass door and flung it open. "You!" he barked. Mrs. Sullivan stopped sweeping and turned slowly. No fear, only calm. Her sharp gaze made Victor hesitate, just for a second. But his ego quickly recovered. He pointed a finger at her face. "You're fired, effective immediately. Pack your things and get out of my house. I don't need a servant who interferes in my business." Victor felt satisfied. One problem solved. Or so he thought. Mrs. Sullivan laughed softly, a light, composed laugh, but filled with authority.
She straightened her posture, placing the broom aside, then walked toward him until they stood only a meter apart. Her voice was calm, but firm. "My duty," she said quietly, "is to ensure that Mrs. Hale's garden does not wither before its time, and no pests destroy what was built with care." The meaning was clear. Victor was the pest. Victor clenched his jaw, speechless. Then he turned sharply and stormed back inside, slamming the glass door so hard it rattled. He didn't realize this confrontation was exactly what Mrs. Sullivan wanted. She was pushing him, making him emotional, careless. Once he disappeared inside, Mrs. Sullivan reached into her pocket, pulling out a sleek, modern smartphone completely at odds with her simple appearance. She made a call to a former colleague, now a branch director at the bank where Victoria stored most of her liquid assets. Her tone shifted, precise, strategic, legal. She instructed him to temporarily restrict access to Victoria's account information and quietly spread a controlled rumor among bank staff that the Hale family assets were undergoing a forensic audit due to a potential inheritance dispute. Mrs. Sullivan knew exactly what she was doing. Victor had connections in that bank. The rumor would reach him within hours, and it did. That afternoon, Victor received a call, his face drained of color. He listened in silence. His hand trembled. If the assets were frozen, if Victoria died without a clear legal transfer, everything could be locked away, out of his reach. Panic set in. The 7 days he thought he controlled suddenly felt very short. If he didn't act fast, everything would collapse. In the garden, Mrs. Sullivan continued sweeping dry leaves, a faint smile on her lips. The bait had been taken, completely. As the sun set over New York City, the sky burned orange before fading into darkness, but inside the mansion, it was anything but quiet. Victor stood in front of a large mirror in the master bedroom, adjusting the collar of his expensive batik-style luxury shirt worth thousands of dollars. He slicked his hair back neatly with gel. A confident smile spread across his face. Today marked the 5th day since the doctor's verdict. 2 days left, maybe less if luck favored him. The thought thrilled him. A soon-to-be wealthy widower. Tonight, he would celebrate. A small gathering, he called it. A Thanksgiving dinner and a business strategy meeting with potential investors. Victor descended the grand staircase like a king stepping down from his throne. Below, the living room had been transformed. Elegant round tables, white tablecloths, fresh floral arrangements, professional catering staff moving gracefully. The aroma of gourmet dishes filled the air. Victor spared no expense, even though the money came from the last remaining balance he had drained from Victoria's supplemental credit card. To him, this was an investment. He needed to look successful, convincing, so people would fund his fictional real estate project. Guests began arriving, one by one. They weren't Victoria's friends, nor her family. They were Victor's connections, men with questionable reputations, an illegal mining operator, a land broker specializing in disputed properties, and of course, Vanessa Blake. But tonight, she wasn't hiding. She stood beside Victor at the entrance, welcoming guests, smiling confidently, as if she were the rightful lady of the house.
Laughter filled the room. Polite small talk, clinking glasses, and ambitious conversations about massive profits to come. Not a single person asked about Victoria's condition at the hospital. To them, she was nothing more than a stepping stone, soon to disappear from existence. Meanwhile, a completely different atmosphere unfolded inside a VIP room at St. Aurora Medical Center. Victoria sat at the edge of her bed. her breathing steady. The IV line was gone. Just minutes earlier, with unwavering determination, she had pulled the needle out herself, pressing the wound with alcohol-soaked cotton until the bleeding stopped. The sting of pain was nothing compared to the betrayal she had endured. Tonight, she felt stronger. Thanks to the antidote and clean meals secretly provided by Mrs. Sullivan over the past 4 days, the poison in her body had slowly begun to neutralize. Her strength was returning. Not fully, but enough. Enough to begin her revenge. The bathroom door opened. Mrs. Sullivan stepped out, carrying a large bag filled with fresh clothes. Without wasting a word, she helped Victoria change out of the dull hospital gown. Victoria put on a long, elegant dress, then carefully wrapped a neat shawl around her head. She looked at herself in the mirror and barely recognized the woman staring back. This was no longer the weak, dying Victoria. This was a woman ready for war. Mrs. Sullivan watched her with pride. Victoria had inherited her father's unbreakable spirit. Tonight, they would leave the hospital, quietly, through the staff exit. Dr. Adrian Cole, now fully aware of Victor's crimes and burdened with guilt for allowing him access before, had agreed to look the other way. Back at the luxury Manhattan estate, the dinner party was in full swing. The sound of silverware clinking against porcelain plates echoed like a symphony of greed. Victor stood at the front of the room, holding a glass of sparkling red grape juice beneath the glow of a crystal chandelier. He tapped the glass gently. The room fell silent. Victor began his speech, confident, charismatic, deceptive. He spoke about his grand vision, how he would transform the assets soon to be inherited into a massive real estate empire. Luxury resorts, endless acres of land, unimaginable profit. He invited his guests to invest early or risk missing out on a golden opportunity. The guests were captivated, nodding eagerly, imagining multiplied returns. To convince them further, Victor had prepared a visual presentation. He signaled Vanessa. She walked to the projector and switched it on. A large white screen descended slowly from the ceiling. Victor smiled widely, ready to impress. The projector lit up, but instead of charts and profits, a video appeared. High-resolution CCTV footage. Victor froze. On the screen, it was him, standing in the kitchen, wearing sleepwear. Calm, cold, ruthless. His hands opening a small packet of white powder, pouring it into a cup of herbal drink, stirring it slowly. Poison. The room went silent. Dead silent. A glass shattered somewhere as a guest dropped their drink in shock. Victor stood frozen, his face drained of color, his mind raced. How? I deleted everything. Cold sweat formed on his forehead. He looked at Vanessa, desperate, but she was just as horrified. Victor forced a laugh, awkward, shaking. This is fake, a setup, some hacker, some competitor trying to destroy me. He rushed to the laptop connected to the projector, pressed keys frantically. Nothing worked. The video continued, scene after scene, documenting his crime. Whispers filled the room. The guests' admiration turned into disgust, suspicion, fear. One by one, they stood up, grabbing their belongings, preparing to leave. They were criminals, but murder, that was a line even they didn't want to cross.
"Wait, sit down, let me explain," Victor shouted. No one listened. Then suddenly, the lights went out. Total darkness. Screams echoed from several guests. The celebration collapsed into chaos. In the darkness, Victor felt it. A presence, watching him, judging him, demanding justice for every drop of poison he had given. Within 10 minutes, the mansion was empty. Cars roared away one by one. No one wanted to stay in a place filled with scandal and darkness. Victor stood alone in the ruined living room. Even Vanessa had fled, using fear of the dark as an excuse. He pulled out his phone, turned on the flashlight. A harsh white beam cut through the darkness, revealing shattered glass, half-eaten food, a destroyed illusion. His breathing grew heavy, his thoughts spiraled. How did that video get there? This is my laptop, locked, secured. Fear mixed with rage. He tried the light switch. Nothing. But outside, streetlights glowed. The neighboring house was brightly lit. Only his mansion was in darkness. This wasn't a blackout. This was sabotage. Victor clenched his fists. "Mrs. Sullivan," he growled. She was the only one with access to the main electrical panel. I'll deal with her myself. He stormed toward the back door, ready to check the power panel. Then he stopped. A sound from upstairs. Tuck, tuck, tuck. Slow, rhythmic, echoing through the staircase. High heels, striking marble floors. Victor's heart nearly stopped. His skin prickled. He knew that sound. He knew it well. Victoria's footsteps. She always wore her favorite heels in the house before she fell ill. But that was impossible. She was supposed to be dying in the hospital, weak, helpless.
Every step Victor took up the staircase felt unbearably heavy, as if an invisible force was dragging him back. The shadows cast by furniture under his phone's flashlight twisted into monstrous shapes, lurking, waiting. When he reached the second floor, he aimed the light toward the master bedroom. The door was slightly open, a dark gap, waiting. Victor pushed it slowly. The door creaked open. His flashlight swept across the room. The bed was perfectly made, the wardrobe closed. Everything normal. Except his gaze locked onto something near the large window overlooking the garden. An old wooden rocking chair, Victoria's late father's chair. It faced away from the door, and on it sat a figure, a woman, long hair flowing, wearing a nightgown Victor recognized instantly, Victoria's favorite. Victor's legs weakened. He stumbled back, hitting the wall. "Victoria?" he whispered. The figure didn't move. The rocking chair began to sway, slowly. Creak, creak, as if something invisible was rocking it. Cold sweat drenched his body. The guilt he'd buried deep inside now rose like a suffocating nightmare. He remembered her pale face, her weak eyes, drinking the poison he gave her. Did she die? Did her spirit come back for revenge? Victor wanted to run, but he couldn't move. Fear and curiosity pulled him forward. He had to know. Step by step, he approached. 3 meters. 2. 1. With trembling hands, he reached out, touched the figure's shoulder, and spun the chair around. The light hit the face, and Victor screamed, falling backward onto the floor. It wasn't Victoria. It wasn't a ghost. It was a mannequin.
A plastic display dummy, dressed in Victoria's nightgown, wearing a wig. Its face was blank, lifeless, but on its chest, a piece of white paper, written in red marker. Victor crawled closer, his hands shaking violently. He read it. Wealth doesn't follow you to death, but your sins will destroy you. Your time is up. Victor crushed the paper in his fist, breathing heavily. This wasn't supernatural. This was deliberate. Someone was playing with him. Someone knew everything. Fear turned into rage. He stood up and kicked the mannequin violently. "Come out!" he shouted. "Stop playing with me!" Only his own voice echoed back. Suddenly, his phone vibrated. Long, sharp. Victor flinched, almost dropping it. A notification. From the bank. For a brief moment, he hoped. Maybe money had come in. But as he read it, everything shattered. His primary credit card declined. All bank accounts under his name temporarily frozen by financial authorities due to suspicious activity and fraud reports. Victor's eyes widened. No, this can't be. He opened his banking app. Access denied. Tried another card. Same result. He collapsed to the floor beside the fallen mannequin. His world gone. The house was dark. The guests had fled. His name ruined. His crimes exposed. And now his money was gone. Not a single dollar left in his wallet. Meanwhile, his debts to loan sharks, due tomorrow. Without access to Victoria's assets, without his own money, Victor realized the truth. He was finished. The mansion felt like a prison, dark, silent, closing in on him. Outside, thunder roared. A storm was coming, as if the world itself was celebrating his downfall. From beyond the tall gate, a pair of eyes watched the dark window. Satisfied, a black car slowly drove away into the night. Morning came. Harsh sunlight pierced through the half-open curtains. Victor awoke on the living room sofa, his body aching, his head pounding from stress. He blinked repeatedly, trying to gather himself. The first thing he saw was the aftermath. Dirty glasses, rotting food, wilted flowers. The once luxurious home now looked like a wreck. Dead. Empty. Just like his future. He checked his phone. 5% battery. No messages. No money. Only a warning. His data plan had run out. His phone bill overdue. Victor sat up slowly, massaging his temples. The memories flooded back. The mannequin. The video. The frozen accounts. All real. But then he remembered something. Today was day 7. According to the doctor, today was supposed to be Victoria's final day. A new idea formed. Dark. Desperate. If she dies today, everything is solved. With a death certificate, he could pressure the bank, unfreeze accounts, claim inheritance, cash out her life insurance worth millions of dollars. Hope returned. Twisted, but enough to move him. Victor rushed to the bathroom, splashed water on his face, grabbed his car keys. He had to get to the hospital. Now. The drive felt endless. New York traffic was suffocating. He cursed at drivers, honking aggressively. In his mind, he rehearsed. Fake tears, perfect grief, a broken husband. After an hour, he arrived at St. Aurora Medical Center, ran inside, took the elevator, straight to the VIP floor. The corridor was quiet. Too quiet. Room 303. Victoria's room. The door was slightly open. Victor pushed it. His eyes widened. Empty. The bed was freshly made. No medical equipment. No belongings. No Victoria. Victor stepped inside, checked the bathroom. Nothing. His knees weakened. Did she die? Was she moved? A senior nurse passed by. She stopped, looked at him, with cold, almost disgusted eyes. Victor approached quickly, putting on a sorrowful expression. "My wife, Victoria, where is she?" The nurse answered flatly, "Mrs. Hale is no longer in this room." Victor's heart pounded. "Where did you take her?" The nurse looked at him straight and said, calm, cold, final, "Her family has completed all formalities." Victor froze. Victoria Hale was gone and very much alive.
After that, the nurse walked away without another glance, leaving Victor frozen in place. The word discharged, to Victor, sounded like confirmation of death. He smirked. Then, slowly, he laughed, a low, distorted laugh that echoed through the empty hospital corridor. "Finally," he muttered, "you're dead." Victory felt close, within reach. He didn't care where her body was, didn't care who had taken it. All that mattered, Victoria Hale was no longer alive. Now, his priority shifted. Find the hidden assets. Victor suddenly remembered something. A few days ago, when he tried to fire Mrs. Sullivan, there was a large monstera plant on the side terrace near her room. She had always been strangely protective of it, even warning him not to get close. That was it, he was sure. The missing assets. Gold, property certificates. They had to be buried there. Victor sped back to the mansion, running red lights, ignoring traffic laws. His mind filled with visions of gold bars, stacks of cash. He arrived, rushed straight to the side terrace. The house was silent. Mrs. Sullivan was nowhere to be seen. He grabbed a small shovel near the water tap and began digging, wildly, desperately. Soil scattered across the clean tiles. His breathing grew heavy. Sweat soaked his expensive shirt. He kept digging, destroying the plant's roots without mercy. Then, clang, the shovel hit something solid. His eyes lit up. "There you are." He dropped the shovel, used his hands to clear the soil, revealing a medium-sized metal box, locked. With the last of his strength, he pulled it out. Heavy, promising. He didn't look for a key. He grabbed a large stone and smashed the lock repeatedly until it broke. His hands trembled, not from fear, from excitement. He opened the box and froze. No gold, no cash, no documents, only envelopes, stacks of them, colorful, messy. Victor grabbed one, opened it, read. His face changed. It was a debt notice from a fraudulent investment scheme he had joined 2 years ago. Amount, hundreds of thousands of dollars. Another, credit card debt, maxed out. Another, warning letter from a luxury sports car leasing company. He tore through the box, desperately. Every single envelope. Debt, bills, legal warnings, seizure notices. Truth hit him like a hammer. Victoria had been paying everything, silently, all his debts, all his lifestyle, all his lies. She had covered everything. At the bottom, one final envelope, white, clean, neatly labeled in Victoria's handwriting. His hands trembled again, but now, from fear. He opened it. The message was short, but devastating. "For years, I covered the holes you kept digging with my father's inheritance.
But 7 days ago, when you wished for my death, I stopped paying everything. Now, enjoy the harvest of what you planted." Victor dropped the letter. His legs gave out. He collapsed onto the terrace floor. For the first time, he understood. While he had been plotting her death, the financial time bomb she had been holding back exploded. He wasn't rich. He had nothing, only mountains of debt. The wealth he chased had already been spent, covering his own greed. Victor grabbed his hair, screaming in frustration. Then he heard it. Engines, multiple, approaching the gate. Loud, aggressive, shouting followed, calling his name, angry, demanding. Victor froze, slowly stood, peered through the side wall. His heart dropped. Around 10 men stood outside the gate, large, intimidating. Some held documents, others wooden batons. Debt collectors, from illegal lenders, loan sharks, every place he had borrowed from. After 7 days of missed payments, they had come, together. Panic consumed him. He ran inside, locked every door, but the banging grew louder. The gate rattled violently. One of them shouted through a megaphone, "Come out now, or we take everything." Victor had no choice. He walked to the second-floor balcony, facing the gate. From above, he shouted, trying to intimidate them. "You're trespassing," he yelled. "I'll call the police. I own this house. I'll pay everything soon." Then he made his move. "My wife just died. I'm the sole heir now. The money is coming." The collectors paused, looked at each other. Hope. Maybe. Victor exhaled slightly. His stalling worked. Then, a sleek black luxury sedan rolled slowly through the crowd. It stopped, right in front of the gate. The rear window lowered, revealing a middle-aged man with thick glasses. Calm, serious. He stepped out, accompanied by 2 assistants carrying document cases. Victor's face went pale. He recognized him. Mr. Harrison Blake, senior attorney, trusted legal advisor to Victoria's late father, former superior at the law firm where Mrs. Sullivan once worked. Even the debt collectors stepped aside. Respect, fear, authority radiated from him. He stood before the gate, looking up at Victor. No need to shout. His voice carried naturally, deep, firm. "Mr. Kane," he said, "I'm here to read an important clause regarding the ownership status of the Hale family assets." Victor rushed downstairs, ran to the gate, still separated by iron bars, breathing heavily. "I'm her husband," Victor snapped. "She's dead. This house is mine. Tell them to leave." Mr. Blake smiled faintly, a knowing smile. He opened a red folder, took out a document. Then, in a clear, commanding voice, he began to read.
The document turned out to be a prenuptial agreement Victor Kane had signed 3 years ago, something he had always dismissed as meaningless, assuming it had long been forgotten. Mr. Herman, the senior attorney representing the Hale family, read aloud a crucial clause. "If proven infidelity, physical abuse, or any act endangering a spouse's life occurs, the offending party forfeits all rights to marital assets and inheritance. All assets will revert to the original family or be donated to a registered foundation." Victor's face drained of color. He immediately denied everything. "There's no proof. I never cheated. I never hurt Victoria. She died from natural illness," he shouted desperately. But Mr. Herman calmly presented another document, a forensic laboratory report.
He explained that arsenic residue had been found in Victoria's hair and nails, and there was also CCTV footage clearly showing Victor preparing the poison. That evidence was more than enough. Victor Tane was no longer an heir. He was now a prime suspect in attempted murder. Chaos erupted. The debt collectors who had been waiting impatiently instantly lost control. Realizing Victor had no money and never would, they began climbing the gates, ready to seize whatever they could. Victor stumbled backward in terror, trapped inside his own estate. But before they could break in, police sirens wailed in the distance. 3 patrol cars arrived at high speed, blocking the street. Officers poured out, securing the scene as the debt collectors scattered or surrendered. For a brief second, Victor felt relief. But that relief shattered instantly. The police weren't there to save him. They were there to arrest him. An officer approached and began reading his rights as cold metal handcuffs locked around his wrists. Then, the rear door of another black sedan opened. Victor turned, and his eyes nearly burst from their sockets. Stepping out of the car was Victoria Hale, alive, radiant. She wore an elegant pastel dress with a soft flowing shawl, her face glowing with health, nothing like the lifeless image Victor had imagined. Beside her stood Mrs. Sullivan, now dressed in a sharp, legal blazer, no longer hiding behind the image of a gardener. Victor collapsed to his knees, not because he was forced, but because his body could no longer support him. Victoria, he whispered, trembling. Victoria stepped forward slowly, stopping behind the iron gate that now separated their fates. She smiled faintly, a cold, final smile. "I'm not dead, Victor." Her voice was soft, but lethal. "But your status as my husband, your wealth, and your future, those died today. The 7 days you gave me, I've returned them to you with interest." Victor broke down, screaming, begging for forgiveness, claiming it was a mistake, that he still loved her. Victoria didn't even look at him. She turned away. With a simple gesture, she signaled the officers. Victor Kane was dragged into the police car as neighbors began gathering, watching his downfall unfold in bright daylight. Inside the estate, final confrontation. The police requested permission to briefly re-enter the luxury Manhattan estate for reconstruction and evidence retrieval. Victoria agreed calmly. She walked inside first, the house that once imprisoned her. Now she owned it completely. Behind her, Victor was dragged in, disheveled, broken, no longer resembling the man he once was. Inside the living room, Victoria sat in a single armchair, upright, composed, commanding. Mrs. Sullivan stood beside her, holding a thick folder of evidence. Victor was forced onto a sofa across from her. Then, a scream echoed from upstairs. Officers brought down Vanessa Blake, who had been hiding in a closet. Her makeup was smeared, her composure gone. The moment she saw Victor, she snapped. "It's all his fault! I didn't know anything! He tricked me!" she screamed. Victor fired back instantly, accusing her of pushing him into the plan, claiming she was drowning in debt and demanded the money. The two turned on each other viciously, exposing lies, secrets, and desperation. A pathetic collapse of greed. Victoria watched in silence, disgust in her eyes. "Enough!" The inspector silenced them. Then Mrs. Sullivan stepped forward. She placed a transparent evidence bag on the table. Inside it, a small bottle filled with white powder. Arsenic, recovered from Victor's car dashboard.
With calm precision, she laid out the entire crime: how Victor purchased the poison on the black market, how he administered it slowly over months, how he attempted document fraud and financial manipulation. Every word sealed Victor's fate further. There was no escape, no loophole, no denial left. Finally, Victoria raised her hand. She was given permission to speak. She looked directly into Victor's eyes and asked quietly, "Why?" Silence filled the room. "I gave you everything. I accepted you when you had nothing. I gave you a home, a future, and my trust." Her voice didn't tremble. It didn't break. It cut. Clean. Final.
But the only thing he received in return was poison and betrayal. Victor Kane broke down. This time, his cries sounded truly desperate. He slid off the sofa and collapsed onto his knees, bowing at Victoria Hale's feet despite his hands being cuffed. His voice cracked as he begged for forgiveness. He admitted he had lost his way, blinded by ambition and manipulation. He swore he would do anything, anything at all, if only Victoria would withdraw her report. He begged her to remember the early days of their marriage, the sweet memories they once shared. He even swore to God that he still loved her. Across the room, Vanessa Blake spat on the floor in disgust, sickened by Victor's pathetic display. The police allowed the moment to unfold, giving the victim space to release her emotions before the legal process resumed. Victoria slowly pulled her feet away from his reach. There was no sympathy left in her. Her heart had turned cold the night Victor whispered her death sentence. She leaned forward slightly, bringing her face closer to his tear-streaked one. Then, in a voice that perfectly mimicked his tone from 7 days ago, she whispered, "At last, you're the one who will rot in prison for a very long time. After this, my home and all my wealth will remain mine, and you will have nothing except the prison uniform on your body." She paused. Her eyes locked onto his. "The 7 days you gave me have turned into 7 days leading to your own destruction." After delivering her final words, Victoria leaned back into the sofa. With a small gesture, she signaled the officers. The inspector immediately ordered his team to take Victor and Vanessa away. Victor screamed her name repeatedly, his voice cracking with fear and regret as he was dragged out. Vanessa was taken as well, crying hysterically. The door closed. Silence followed. A deep, relieving silence. Victoria exhaled slowly, as if releasing years of burden from her shoulders. Mrs. Sullivan stepped closer and gently placed a hand on her shoulder. Victoria turned and smiled sincerely, the woman who had saved her life. The trial in that living room was over. The social verdict had been delivered, and legal justice would soon follow. For the first time in a long time, Victoria knew she could sleep peacefully, without fear of never waking again. 1 month later. A month had passed from the shocking arrest that shook the neighborhood in New York City. The case, an attempted murder driven by greed, dominated headlines for weeks. Public sympathy poured toward Victoria. Meanwhile, Victor Kane and Vanessa Blake were widely condemned. The legal process moved swiftly. Thanks to Mrs. Sullivan, formerly known as a formidable attorney, the evidence was airtight. In court, Victor had no defense. The prosecutor demanded the maximum sentence. After reviewing the horrifying CCTV footage, the judge delivered the verdict: life imprisonment for Victor Kane on multiple charges: attempted premeditated murder, fraud, document forgery. Vanessa Blake received 10 years in prison as an accomplice.
a new beginning. That morning, the air around the luxury Manhattan estate felt incredibly fresh. Sunlight poured into the newly transformed property. Over the past month, Victoria had completely renovated the house. She erased every trace of Victor. Walls repainted, furniture replaced, entire rooms redesigned. The master bedroom, once a silent witness to betrayal, was reborn entirely. She even burned all of Victor's belongings, clothes, photos, memories. The ashes were thrown far away, a complete cleansing of her past. Now, the house felt alive, peaceful, free. In the garden, in the spacious backyard garden, Victoria sat calmly on a modern rattan chair. Before her stretched a vibrant garden of roses, jasmine, and orchids in full bloom. Across from her sat Mrs. Sullivan, no longer dressed as a gardener, but as a dignified, refined woman. Between them, 2 cups of warm tea and a plate of freshly fried banana fritters. No longer employer and servant, but equals, partners, 2 strong women. Mrs. Sullivan handed over a document folder. Inside, monthly financial reports, asset security confirmations, and a proposal to establish a legal aid foundation. As promised, Victoria wanted to repay her, not just with money, but with purpose. But Mrs. Sullivan refused to simply retire. She wanted to return to the legal world, not for profit, but to help women trapped in manipulative marriages. Victoria supported the idea immediately. She became the foundation's main donor. Mrs. Sullivan would lead it. Victoria smiled as she read the proposal. Her life now had meaning. She was no longer a naive heiress. She was a survivor, and now a force for others. She looked at Mrs. Sullivan and said softly, "Without you, I wouldn't be here today." Mrs. Sullivan smiled wisely. "I only fulfilled your father's last wish." Then she added, "This plan only worked because you were strong enough to pretend weakness for 7 days." They laughed. The conversation turned lighter. Victoria planned to personally manage her late father's Disney empire. No more blind trust, no more dependence. She would become a woman no one could deceive again. Mrs. Sullivan promised to guide her, sharing all her knowledge. Birds chirped softly. A gentle breeze brushed against Victoria's face, lifting the edge of her shawl. She closed her eyes, breathing in freedom. No more poison, no more fear, no more lies. At the front gate, a courier arrived delivering new plant seedlings. Victoria walked towards it with light steps, smiling. As she turned back, she looked at her home, no longer a golden prison, but a kingdom of freedom. Her eyes landed on the large monstera pot, the very place where Victor found his downfall. Now it held a new, thriving plant. In her heart, Victoria made a promise. She would tend her life like a garden, cut away all parasites, and nurture only what was true. The story of Victoria Hale and Victor Kane had ended. Victor, now rotting behind cold prison bars, paying for his greed every single day. Victoria, standing tall under the sunlight, ready for a new chapter. The 7 days of terror were over, replaced by thousands of days filled with hope. Truth had prevailed, justice had been served, and karma had done its work perfectly. Victoria returned to her seat beside Mrs. Sullivan. She lifted her teacup. They clinked cups gently, a toast to a beautiful new life. The end.